I started playing guitar back in 2008. We moved here from BC, and I'd been playing the cello for a lot of years, and just, it's a melody instrument, not being able to find enough depth with it. So my son Miro started music lessons again when we moved here, and there was a young fellow that was teaching at the studio, and I said to my son, look, why don't we do this together on Saturday mornings? And I want to do something different. The cello's not working for me, so I started playing the guitar, and it just kind of took off. I was working with Chris Poole for about 2.5 years, and it just, I don't know what happened, it just took off. Started writing quite a bit. Oh, recording. So I've been playing pretty much every day for a few years, and in 2010 we had a really close friend of ours from university days pass away quite tragically and quite suddenly. So I wrote an instrumental piece of music for him and recorded it in what was my makeshift studio at the time, and published it on YouTube in commemoration for him, and that was kind of the first piece that I did. It's called Traveling Song for Adrian. And then I just, Miro and Kath bought me one year some equipment that I wouldn't have ordinarily got myself, and it just opened the whole possibility of having a recording studio. And finally, after years and years and years of not being able to get the music down, actually start doing that. And so that was really the start of it. And in 2011 I started on Solitaire, which was the first instrumental album, and that was mind-blowing because it just started. I didn't have any clue what I was doing with the computer and recording equipment and all the gear. And it just took off, and that whole album was recorded here over Christmas and New Year's in about 2 weeks. And after that, I just never looked back. The music just started to come, the playing started to increase, and then the songwriting started to come. Where this is going to go, I think about that quite a bit. I'm trying to let it move along organically. The second album, Heaven's Arms, I got really, at that point I was really kind of connected with what I was doing musically. I'd learned quite a bit in a very short space of time, mostly from bumping into people. I was working with Indie Pool in Toronto, which helped publish the music, and they were also doing the mixing and mastering at Carvello Studios. But I missed that sort of interaction, and been watching the indie movement, which I'm really inspired by. Back in the 60s and the 70s, you just didn't have access to getting your music out there like you do now. And so it's quite a special time in music, and I think people that are in the indie stream don't realize just how accessible it is as an artist to be out there. So it has its own, I'm aware that it has its own path. There's certain things you do in the indie movement, like video of shows and things like that. And I'm not sure I really want to tread the same path. I'd like it to find its own way. And I'm coming at it as a new artist in a different time in my life. It didn't happen for me when I was 14 or 20. It's happening now. So I'm really that 14-year-old starting from scratch, but now. And so the path may be a little bit different. I can see it, but I don't exactly know how it's going to play itself out. But I've had some beautiful people come into my life along the way that have really helped that a lot and given it some direction and support and things like that. And that's happened a lot in the last year and a half, 2 years particularly. So it'll unfold, I think. What do now? You know, when I look back on the Solitaire album, and particularly going into Heaven's Arms, I think one of the musicians, two of the musicians that really, when I picked up the guitar, I really felt connected to was Ry Cooder and Ale Farke Touré. I've never really been able to play that Mali type music that Touré plays, but the whole expression of the instrument through instrumentals, not necessarily songs with lyrics. Ry Cooder's Paris, Texas soundtrack just blew me away, and that had always been there. So they were pretty influential for that. And the Heaven's Arms album, part of that, half of that was actually recorded here. The other half, I took my portable recording unit with me, and I happened to be in Western Australia, so the rest of that album was written there in that kind of environment, you know, on the edge of a river that they were in for the recordings that Ry Cooder and Farke Touré did together. So it was really inspired with that. You know, when I started the albums, I thought, okay, right now I'm fortunate. Like a lot of artists, I'm working at something else while I'm pursuing my craft. And I wanted the music to work for itself somehow. And so with the Solitaire album, I happened to be sitting in City Hall and City Council. I can't remember for what reason. I was in the public part of the council, and there was a group that got up from iHuman to present their yearly budget and ask for more funding. And one of the young fellows who's an alumni from iHuman got up and spoke about his experience of being a street kid and growing up on the street, and how iHuman helped him get out of that whole terrible part of life. And he went on to university. I think he studied law and human resources and came back to be a mentor. And it was such an inspiring conversation that I thought, okay, I know what to do with this album. So that's where the community projects kind of started. I committed to donate all the downloads from that album to iHuman, and I've done that twice, once with the first album and then the single that came after it. And I've gone on to do that. So Heaven's Arms, a year later, became aware of Yes, and they take street kids off the street at night and give them room and shelter in a dorm that they have, and food, and they've got a huge clothing bank and stuff like that. It's quite remarkable, actually, and it's also quite remarkable how deep the need is for support like this in Edmonton. We were very surprised when we moved here to see how much social cause that was needed. And so the download proceeds from the second album, Heaven's Arms, went to them. And this album, got a little bit more aware in writing the song Calais on the Where To Now album of the refugee crisis. And so this last album and the single we took off the album, Helium Eyes, all the download proceeds of that have been going to Doctors Without Borders. Been looking for you. Going forward, I've been thinking about that quite a bit, especially after having my album release party in September of this year. The previous projects, I hadn't really celebrated those outside of sort of the family and friends. And so Where To Now marked a big change in the evolution of my music and what I would like to do with it. It also marked a significant change away from instrumental music to singer-songwriter music. And so I decided to have a private album release for it, and neighbors across the street offered to host it in their home, and it was a beautiful day on a Saturday. It turned into a beautiful evening, and there were a couple of new musicians that turned up to play the event with me, Chris Tabbert and Dustin Roy, along with Lara Tang and Stu Kirkwood, who were on the album. And we celebrated it, and it was really a great thing to do. I have some dreams and aspirations about where it may go, and yeah, I'd like to do a tour or tours and see the music out there and meet other musicians and other groups doing that music, and be involved with other kinds of creative projects in music. So it'll unfold how it's supposed to, and I'm just going to trust that. A saying that I heard recently from Margarita Erglova, who was with Glenn Hansard, his partner at the time, when they were the Swell season. I remember seeing them accept their Oscar for Once, which was the documentary, and she got up and said, what did she say? She said, fair play to those who dream and never give up on your dream. I like that, and I'm staying with that.